Welcome to the 8th episode of Timely Topics. I'm your host, Rory McGloin, and I'm excited to be joined by my fabulous co-host, Jen Matthew.
Hello.
Hello. Our theme for this episode is consistency. We'll discuss our personal experiences with consistency and how it typically benefits us in our day-to-day and professional lives. But is being consistent always a good thing? Are there drawbacks to being too consistent? What about businesses? Is it possible to be too consistent? Stick around for our Timely Topics segment in which Jen and I will explore the pros and cons of consistency. And as always, to close out our show, Jen will present her mystery topic to me for the good idea or bad idea segment. Let's go. Welcome to the Timely Topics show, where we're bringing you all the buzz and banter of today's business conversations. Straight from our studios in downtown Hartford, with your hosts, Rory McGloin and Jennifer Matthew.
All right, episode 8, we're here. Finally, you're back here in Hartford with us. You've been all over the world, it seems like, over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I was traveling a little bit on a few planes. We were out in Tulsa a couple weeks ago, went to the Association for Business Communication conference. Huge shout out to the organizers. Always a great time. Was in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
I've never been to Tulsa.
I had not been to Tulsa either. It was a really good time. I didn't know that at one stage it was the oil capital of the world and really kind of claims its stake as being a city that connected the east and the western parts of the United States with railroads and bridges and bringing it all together. So we had a lot of fun.
That's cool. How was the conference?
Conference was great. I mean, anytime you go to a place where you're coming together with people that are super passionate about the thing that you're super passionate about, you can sit down with anybody and immediately dive into the details and tactics and strategies. And it just feels like you're getting together with a bunch of old friends, even though you've never met many of the people before. Yeah. So I always come away from the ABC conference feeling inspired and enthused by the work that we're doing.
Yeah, and then you also headed home.
I did. I headed home. I headed back to my second home in Ireland. Mairead and I went back for my cousin Mary's wedding, which was a lot of fun. Weddings in Ireland are a spectacle, so congratulations to Mary and Damien. It was great to see everybody, and we just had a ton of fun. So
you always share great history, traditions of Ireland and Irish culture. So tell me what's different about Irish weddings.
They do tend to be a little bit more like traditional, right? The pomp and circumstance. So, mass started at 12:30 in the afternoon, and then dinner doesn't go off till 6. So you've got a lot of time in between there. And you come back to the hotel reception area and people will sit down and they'll have tea and they'll come together and there's gathering, there's chatting. And it really is like families coming together and like there's this kind of this great conversation piece that takes place well before dinner. So when everybody piles into the dinner room, like everybody's hungry and they're enthusiastic. But one of my favorite parts and one of my favorite traditions, as you might not be surprised, is the speeches. So obviously I think in American culture, like we do speeches. Mm-hmm. In Ireland, they take speeches to the next level. Like they really are a spectacle. Sometimes they'll last upwards of an hour, which can be a little long. The speeches, by the way, were great at the wedding. And just huge shout out to everybody there that did an awesome job. But they'll also read wedding cards. So like one of the things I think is really fun is they'll grab some random cards and they'll pop open the cards and they'll read the best wishes. Cool. And it is cool because a lot of times, especially, modern Irish culture, like so many people have immigrated to Australia, Canada, America, and they'll send the card back home and they'll read the best wishes of people that couldn't be there. And people know that they're going to be read sometimes. So they might throw in some funny little one-liners as well to be read out.
I like that a lot. I love that. And yeah, usually you don't go to a wedding and see people opening gifts and sitting around. Like, that's just not part of our culture, at least here in the U.S. So being able to get those sentiments that are also really fantastic that can be shared, like wedding advice or marriage advice, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of advice. And the other thing that's actually really crazy about Irish weddings is like they start, like the mass is at 12:30. The band doesn't come on until 9 and finish till 11:30. Then there's an entire like disco DJ set that goes to like 3 o'clock in the morning, and then people continue on all night. We only made it to 1 o'clock in the morning, which was actually pretty good for us.
That's way past my bedtime.
We are entering tradition season though, Jen. Mm-hmm. I think we're entering this like great time of year where like traditions come to life, where either it's celebrating generations of traditions or it's making new traditions. Thanksgiving's around the corner. What are your Thanksgiving traditions? Do you have anything that you love to do or you get excited about this time of year?
Well, for me, I love the food.
Okay,
so,
perfect.
I mean, I think a lot of people think about Thanksgiving and all of the amazing things they can eat. So, I'm vegetarian. Mm-hmm. So the big thing that people eat is turkey. Right. I love to cook, so I don't not cook meat. I just don't eat it. Oh. So my turkey, I've heard, is really good. Okay. But I love all the sides. So anything potatoes, as you know. Like, give me any side of any kind of potato.
All the potatoes.
I'll just do every side dish could be a form of potato and I would be completely fine with it.
Amazing.
But I love to just make tons and tons of different sides because you can be so fun with
creative
them.
With them.
Yeah. So I love to search on Pinterest to find a way to spin things up so you're not doing the same thing every year.
So our episode's about consistency,
Yeah.
so not doing the same thing every year. Is there anything, though, that from Thanksgiving to the New Year's season that for you is a tradition that, like, it's not the season unless you do this thing or celebrate this thing or eat this thing?
Well, I love Christmas is my favorite time of year, and it's less about the day itself, and I think it's just the feeling and the atmosphere, and I'm sure we'll talk all about that over the next couple of months.
You're a great gift giver, right? And I know this over the years from you. But when it comes to the traditions of like Black Friday and going out shopping, is that everything you were into?
Yeah, so I think, and that's a big tradition around Thanksgiving. Everyone always talks about Black Friday, and then there's Cyber Monday, and then there's like, everything that happens the day of Thanksgiving.
Is it Local
and then
Tuesday?
Things. I don't even. I think that there's
we gotta give a shout out
Giving
for
Tuesday.
Okay, Giving Tuesday. Perfect,
yeah, and then there's the Small Business Saturday. Right.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that happen after Black Friday, but then now there's so much that happens. As we know, the last few years, it's like the week before Black Friday or countdown to Black Friday. So there's a ton around the shopping piece of it. And I used to be all into that. And I think I've sort of deteriorated from that excitement of shopping.
Yeah.
One, because I think Amazon does Prime Day. They do it now multiple times a year. So you're getting these big deals that are happening all the time, all year round. But I also think we've talked about like my intentional presence that I've really been trying to lean into. So it's not on Thanksgiving, I want to be everywhere but there with my family. No, I want to be there with my family. So I'm not online shopping and I'm not doing those things. And then Black Friday is actually the day that I do my whole like Christmas blowout all over my entire house. So I don't have time to shop.
Christmas explodes in Jen's house.
Yeah, I'm putting out my 4 Christmas trees.
So I used to have this great tradition. A friend of mine from high school, go to college and you kind of don't see each other. We both came back home to the area. And for many, many years, we would go out Christmas shopping together. And we would always struggle what we're going to get people. So we'd have dinner, a couple drinks, and we'd go shopping. And it was a ton of fun. And we haven't done it in the last few years. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that like just e-commerce has changed everything. So now we just get together, but there's no shopping anymore.
And you just sit with your laptops?
Is done. Yeah.
Do that. Do you shop for friends still?
I'm not the best gift giver. I think for me, I want to be. Like, I'm inspired by people that give gifts, and I wish that I could because I'm always like thinking such good thoughts about people, but I just don't execute on it. So maybe that's going to be one of my New Year's resolutions, become a better gift giver.
Definitely.
Speaking of friends, it's time for our correspondence section. Jen, did we get any correspondence?
We did. So unfortunately, we asked for book recommendations, and you have all failed us. Just kidding. We'll give you another shot. So please send in your book recommendations. We're always looking for good reads. But I'll give you one because in the spirit of giving,
thank you,
and my great gift giving is a book. So Oversubscribed, Daniel Priestley, loved this book. And I actually recommended it to a few of you. And you actually started it recently.
Literally this morning on my ride in and kind of walking around and hanging out at the gym and stuff. I listened to it and I'm already into it. And I think it's going to be a great read.
Awesome. And you finished another good book recently.
So Justin Morales, who's our guest on the podcast in a little bit, he was part of our build course earlier this semester. He has a new book out called Serving Life Behind Bars, Kitchens, and Hospitalities. I sat down to initially review the book, getting ready for the interview today. I read the whole thing in 2 hours. If you are from the Hartford area, if you've been out to restaurants, if you appreciate people in the hospitality business, check out Justin's book. It's really good. Sammy R. checked in with us and said, quote, I totally agree with making gut decisions because they align with my values. The right answer isn't always my right answer, in reference to last month's podcast on the topic of intuition and making decisions.
Yep. And David P. responded. We had an interview with Aaron, and he said, I loved hearing from Aaron about doing things half different and breaking out from what everyone else is doing. It made me think about how I do things and how I can set myself apart from the future. Great interview, great episode, and sorry to have missed the book club event. It's okay, David. We will catch you at the next one.
Yeah. And speaking of Aaron Haskostas, Aaron actually checked in with us and paid us a nice compliment. You guys have been incredible partners, meaning CCI, and all the things that we've been doing. Thanks for having me in your super cool studio. Thanks for coming in, Aaron. Thanks for the compliment.
And Andrea W. said, I loved Rory's good idea or bad idea segment about promoting within. I think that promoting existing employees rewards them for their commitment and helps to maintain good company culture.
We promote you, Andrea. Thanks so much for that checking in. We would love to hear from you. Any of your correspondence is always welcome. You can find us on a variety of channels, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram. We've got our YouTube channel at UConn.CCEI, or just send us an email, Collaboratory@uconn.edu.
Guess what just happened?
No way, you're kidding me.
Hey, did you hear about...
Are you sure about that?
I can't believe they...
Really?
It's time for Timely Topics.
Our topic for this episode is consistency. Being consistent in business is typically a good thing if the thing you're doing is good. But is it possible to be too consistent? And how do we strike a balance between the benefit of being consistent without being so beholden to our habits that they shelter us from new opportunities? To change or to stay consistent? Certainly somewhere in between is the sweet spot. Or is it?
So this episode, we are talking about consistency. And you know that I like to bring these topics up to the team. And we had our team meeting this week.
Yep.
And I had the team go around and say, what are you consistent with? Which I think caught everyone by surprise. And then necessitated a lot of questions about definition.
Yeah, we didn't get very far, right? It was like, I think I was the first person to disrupt it and be like, well, does that mean every day, every week, every month, every year? And then you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then we got stuck because we were trying to figure out, like, what is consistency? Like, how do we actually go ahead and measure it?
Yeah, so I loved that they got a little philosophical. So wanted the definition. The thing I thought that stood out to me the most was trying to create this measurement system. So consistency obviously means something we do at some set amount of frequency, whatever that might be, if it's daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. And they also started going around eventually sharing those things that they do consistently. But those things that they shared were examples of daily activity that I think necessitates consistency, like checking a calendar and checking your emails. So it wasn't necessarily what I assumed that they were going to come up with.
Yeah, we raised this debate of like, what's the difference between consistency and discipline? And we debated discipline earlier in one of our previous shows, and we said, okay, well, actually not the same thing, because when we went down this path of having the measurement of consistency versus what makes you disciplined, we found that they were actually ultimately different.
Yeah, so discipline requires consistency, but consistency doesn't require discipline.
I love that.
Yeah, so interesting. So what are your thoughts about those pieces?
I love that point because I think one of the conundrums for me is that, like, I love consistency. I love organization. I like having routine. So we were saying I was traveling around a little bit, right? But here's what I've noticed in myself is that when I am doing things that are outside of my routine, when I'm being inconsistent with whatever the thing is, biggest moments of growth for me personally, right? So when you're traveling, you're outside of your routine, you start to appreciate the little things from home, right? If you've ever gone away from home for a couple weeks at a time, like you come home and you're like, oh my God, I love certain elements of being back at home, being back in the routine, whether it's like what you eat or where you go or who you see. So my takeaway for consistency is this, and it's less of a definition, but more of a philosophy. And it is that I think that if you spend 90% of your life being like relatively consistent, right? For me, that 10% of time when you're inconsistent is actually when you have like the best experiences, right? And they might not always be necessarily good experiences in the moment, but where you're going to get the biggest learning moments or like growth from. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah. So I heard of this research study that was done that said that 45% of our daily activities are automatic. So they're just things that we're doing without even thinking about them, which is crazy to think that we just hit start on the start of the day. And then when I heard that, I actually went through my mind, I'm like, yep, I do this. Okay, and I get up and I walk my dogs. And I went through this whole process, and it's usually, unless my day is different because I'm traveling or doing something out of the norm, I don't change that much. And what that means to me is this being really intentional about what you're doing and putting thought into what you're doing. I'm finding that you really only do that when you are out of routine or traveling. So of course that gives you the opportunity to learn, because you are now in the moment. You do now have to think about how you're going to get to the place you're going, because you don't just start your car and then land at work, right?
Isn't it interesting? Because like routine is easy, which is why I think we like consistency. But as we know, the old adage, right? Anything worth doing is going to be hard. You're going to learn and grow. So when we like break those routines, but yet I would say, going back to my percentage breakdown, if 90% of your day-to-day life was highly inconsistent, that sounds like chaos, right?
Yeah.
So like, how can you perform consistently in the things that are going to make you who you are? Like, how do you demonstrate the value that you've taken from those inconsistent moments, right? How do you apply the learned lessons if everything's completely inconsistent?
And I think you have to have that, because if like your life was totally random, you would be so overstimulated. So that's why your brain shifts to doing most of your tasks subconsciously, so that all of your conscious activity can be focused on danger, on things that you need to respond to and use your brain and your conscious, mind. So without that, I don't think you could function as high level if everything was chaos and not routine.
So let's change gears. So we've kind of talked about the personal side of this, and we'll be interested to get some thoughts from our listeners. But what's the business side, right? And as I started thinking about and preparing for this topic, I thought about, well, being consistent, delivering your product or service, definitely a good thing, right? Especially if you're doing it well. If you're not doing it well, then that's a problem. But if you're doing this thing well, then being consistent is a good thing. Like we go into the same coffee shops, we go to the same sandwich shops, right? Or we go and we buy a product offline and we get it and it's good. You order more, you set it on subscription and you're good to go. And yet we also get really frustrated when companies roll out these new updates, right? When they try to change things, when they try to make things better, because we like the consistent version. But here's the question, right? If the old adage of the more things change, the more they stay the same, how does a business grow and evolve when we as consumers and customers rely so heavily on the consistency, and yet they must evolve at some point, right, to be able to adhere to the changes in the marketplace or the demands of their customers?
And I'm going to say something, and I think you're going to love it. It has to do with values. I think if a company's saying, I value innovation, and they are consistently innovating, it makes sense. So they can change over time, but their value is staying the same. If they value innovation and they never innovate, is where you're like, hey, buddy, what are you doing here?
Yeah,
right?
I suppose that's really true, right? So, we mentioned some kind of like food hospitality spaces, and I think we like the consistency, but we also love showing up and seeing like the new menu, right? Because we want to know that the chef or the bartender is really like putting some thought into it. If you're in the tech space, which is where we've just gone through this evolution of software adoptions here at the university, some of them being relatively frustrating, but it would be hard to be a tech company and say, yeah, we're just going to roll out one piece of software and we're never going to change it. No matter how much you like it, it's our responsibility to keep things evolving. I was thinking a little bit about this as well. Like COVID served as our most recent large-scale disruptor of everything, right? It made everything inconsistent. So we took all of our daily norms and expectations and we just shook up the snow globe and we said, yeah, let's see how things are going to fall out. And I thought about this, right? Unfortunately, there were some casualties. But the ones that came out successful, the businesses that came out the other side successful, were the ones that were immediately going, how do we pivot? How do we be nimble? How do we change? How do we create inconsistency in what we used to do and find new consistency? So I kind of want to have a little call out for our business leaders and listeners. If you're looking back at your business over the last 10 years, let's say, and you got through COVID and you made no changes, no significant changes in how you do business, to me, that should be a red alert that somewhere, somebody in your marketplace is about to take your market share.
Well, it's funny that you said that. And I think that customers are we're habits. We're creatures of habit. So the companies that actually said, wait a second, how are our customers going to respond to being in quarantine or locked down for a period of time? How is that going to change their habits of going physically to a grocery store? We have to think about, they're not going to stop grocery shopping. How do we then integrate technologies to allow them to do the thing that they actually have to do to have access to food in their house, but do it in a way that now changes their habit, which we also see now post-COVID. A lot of these habits, working from home, online shopping, these things have not gone away. So it's interesting how it honed in on a habit that actually transformed and changed and maybe gave us space to do other things that we need to do.
Speaking of not going away, one of the things that we also came across is we were looking for some examples of companies who have chosen to be intentionally inconsistent or chosen to make some pretty significant changes. And for anybody that has ever flown Southwest Airlines, right, over the last few decades, you get on and you box out for your seat, which I love, right? I think that's just great. Like you get on, there's a scramble, you're kind of running down. For me,
I hate that.
I love it. I'm like, can I get myself to an exit row? Like, if I could, I would sprint past people in the aisles if I could. They're changing. So in 2025, they are going to no longer this open seating plan, but they're going to put people in seats. And they've gotten your feedback, Jen, right?
Exactly.
So they're accommodating you, right? You want the consistency.
The consistency.
But it's going to be interesting because I think if you're a long-term, Southwest flyer, you were used to that open seating plan. And depending on when you boarded, you might have actually liked the inconsistency of not knowing where you're going to sit every time you get on a plane. Maybe you're an aisle person, maybe you're a window person, maybe you want to sit in the middle seat. And now that's going to be taken away. And then the other example that we found on this was Apple and its release dates. So they do not consistently always have the same schedule for when they're releasing things. They actually kind of like to have some sort of inconsistency, some buzz about when they're going to launch a product. And Apple, of course, those product launches are always like a big spectacle. And it kind of raises some questions about this topic because we started with a place that's like, well, consistency is good. And then you kind of look at it for a second and you're like, but yet businesses often find success when they create these moments of inconsistency?
I think that one of the terms that we didn't say is expectation. So I think that there's a line between consistency and expectation from a consumer standpoint. So when a consumer believes that the company that they want to do business with is going to do something at a set period of time, they're expecting that company is going to show up in that way. And I feel that way when you're talking about Southwest and picking your seats. You have an expectation of maybe how air travel should be if you're used to flying on a different flight, or expecting that there's going to be a seat available for you when it's not, expecting that there's going to be a new iPhone available for you sometime in the fall, because that's usually when it's launched. There is some value in that consistency or regular scheduling, but also allowing for the adoption of innovation, keeping us on our toes, like giving some mystery and excitement.
Yeah, novelty
well.
is good for human nature, right? We do like surprises to some degree, right? Because I think
sometimes.
I think they activate our systemic responses to things, like our nervous system response. We're like, ooh, okay, like, and it brings you to life. It was just Halloween, so scary movie season was up, and there's a big debate about like who wants to watch it, right? And the inconsistency of the movie flow. But let's dive into one more topic here. I want to talk a little bit about employees, teams. When you think about how important values are, we talk about hire for values, right? To us, when we're working with our entrepreneurs and we're startups and we're trying to help them build their teams, we spend a lot of time with them saying, like, you have to have consistent values. Your purpose needs to be obvious and consistent, and that's how you're going to hire. That's how you're going to find the right investors, the right vendors, the right partners. You're going to go work with a factory. Like, they have to have alignment. So I was thinking a little bit about, I go in and we do a lot of team training and we try to develop intra-organizational communication patterns. And one of the things that I look for are consistencies and inconsistencies in regards to like how they communicate with one another, the channels that they use, or how they respond, timeliness, those sorts of things. I just started debating this. Like, so how do you help a team evolve and grow alongside the product and service, but also maintain a level of consistency? It's really hard. And I think that's where we see imbalances in businesses, where maybe the product or service has grown, the business side has grown, but the team hasn't evolved, or the team's evolving and the product service isn't going with it.
Yeah, and I think we've experienced that a little bit at CCEI too. As our team has gotten bigger and we take on more and more responsibilities, there's more people that share a similar project that they're working on, a program, and we integrate a lot of standard operating procedures, but also being really mindful that it can't just be like rinse and repeat, or here's the manual on how to do it, because I think that gets rid of the innovation, the excitement, and the evolution. But I like what you said about creating almost a culture or a level of expectation of how you are going to communicate. So what channels do we communicate in which ways, which creates a consistency on, if you email me, you're going to get a response from me in 24 to 48 hours. If you text me, you're going to get a response in the next hour. So that consistency, I think, is a good way from a culture standpoint.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, as you said, you have to create levels of consistency. And I'm using a 90-10, and I'd be interested to kind of hear from some of our listeners, like, what do they think the balance should be? Is it 50-50? Is it 75-25 in a different direction, right? That's something that I think we have to probably dive more into, is like finding what that is. And so as we look to wrap up this conversation, we turn it over to you. Like, what is important to you when it comes to consistency? When you're working with a business, when you're working with your teams, what is it that you look for? And what degree of inconsistency do you welcome? And how is it that you go and you celebrate those inconsistencies? Let us know, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
In this episode, Rory interviews Justin Morales. Justin is a seasoned hospitality professional with over 30 years of experience. He has worked and lived in the city of Hartford for a significant part of his career, earning him a deep understanding and appreciation for its vibrant culinary scene. In 2017, Justin was honored with the Connecticut Mixologist of the Year Award, showcasing his exceptional skills behind the bar. Justin attributes his success to the influence of great mentors and chefs he has worked with throughout his career. When he's not managing Fire by Forge, Justin loves to experiment with different ingredients. His top 5 essentials are salt, lemon, garlic, orange peels, and nutmeg, which he skillfully incorporates into his creations. Justin is also the author of the book, Serving Life, Behind Bars, Kitchens, and the Hospitality Industry. So now let's dive into the interview.
All right, Justin, welcome to the studio. I am so excited to be here. We're with Justin Morales, who just published his new book, Serving Life, Behind Bars, Kitchens, and Hospitality. I sat down to do some notes on it last night. I actually read the whole thing in 2 hours. It is a historical insight into like the last 30 years. So if you've been to a bar, restaurant, if you've been out in Hartford, Justin has somehow influenced your food, your drink, or the culture of that restaurant. Justin, awesome to have you here.
Yeah, this is awesome. Exciting.
It's really cool. So I read the book last night. tonight, and cover to cover. And I want to kind of start with the first question. So you've been in the hospitality business for a long, long time. And you started kind of your career just as a youth coming out, trying to find a place that fit for you. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got that start and why ultimately, above all the other things that you tried, why the kitchen was the place you were drawn to?
Yeah, I did a lot of different things when I was younger. I always had to work. I always wanted to work. But when I hit the kitchen, it just was, it was a fit because the culture was just something that enamored me, right? So it was a mentorship of sorts, as the restaurant business is, if you think about it. But there was older guys in there from all walks of life and just different people saying lots of things, different types of things. It was high pressure, but it was fun. It was just kind of outrageous. And for me, at my age at that time, that outrageousness kind of just really fit with what I was looking for out of life, and it just fit. The culture would fit for me.
Yeah, it just fit. And I just want to take a moment kind of to say thank you to you for writing the book and to actually appreciate everybody in the hospitality industry, especially those who made a career. And the reason I say that is that I lasted 4 weeks at Friendly's, and it wasn't for me. But we all enjoy going out and having a drink. We all enjoy sitting down, having a cup of coffee, an amazing meal. And I think most of us, we get up, we sign the check, and we walk out. We never actually think about the people that are behind those businesses. And for me, this book was an invitation for me to get really intimate and personal with somebody who has lived it. And so thanks, because I think ultimately a lot of us really probably would learn a lot from appreciating the other side. And however, in the book, you talk about something that's really interesting. You talk about hospitality people as being part of a club, right? You're in the club and you maintain kind of separation between those who are in and those who are not in. What does that club mean to you? What does it mean to be a part of that club?
Yeah, I mean, it's a badge of honor. It's almost, kind of the mafia, right? We have things that we have our own language, we have our own movements. It's funny because if you're in the kitchen, if you took a guest outside in the dining room where everything is fun and pleasant and nice, and you just kind of walk them in the kitchen, they would probably, their jaw would drop and they would not look at restaurants the same. And what we do is we build that fourth wall purposely so you don't know what's on the other side. But because we face it together every single day with the people that we're there with, it's it makes it very special because we're in the trenches together. So we know things that other people don't know. We have a language that other people don't know. We have the same challenges that other people don't know and the same rewards. So it's the club is super special to me. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you work the hours, everybody else is out having fun. You're out grinding and working, and when everybody else is at work, then you're having your fun. And of course, just having that schedule shift. I want to kind of dive into this really important question to me personally, which is, how did you get to this point that you sat down to want to write a book? I mean, bartender, chef, general manager, entrepreneur, bourbon owner. I mean, you have had so many different roles and you've taken so many different pathways. And then at one point you said, I think I want to write this down. Where did Justin get to that he felt like he was compelled to do that?
Well, you just made the list, man. There wasn't much more to do but a book. So, no, you know what it was? Honestly, it was two things. I had just found out that I was going to have a baby, so that kind of was I look at my life in seasons, and right now I'm in autumn. As you can see, the leaves are changing on the top of my head. But when the baby was coming, and then I was at a training place where we're training program where we're giving back. Yeah. It was like this full circle, right, of circle of life, and that's kind of when the story should be told. Some people, if you tell the story before the kind of ending is there, it's open-ended and people want an ending. So I figured I had that autumn, with the training program, coming full circle, giving back to people that were like me that I didn't have. And then, like I said, just having the baby really helped.
Yeah, I mean, that's tremendous insight and perspective on your part to kind of find the right timing. Let's talk about this for a second. I'm reading the book. The first few chapters kind of talk about your early days. Growing up wasn't easy. But one of the things that I've learned about Justin from getting to know you and from reading the book is that never bothered you, right? That was always just part of your character. If it wasn't easy, it didn't matter. You were going to find a way. And you talk about the kitchen ultimately being a fit. And now today, you have a great privilege of working in an institution where you can give back, right? So you guys are running training programs. Have you taken some solace in feeling like it all kind of came full circle to you? And what does that mean when you look back at your early days, those first moments in the restaurant to where you are today? How have you evolved and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I could look at these kids we're talking to today and really let them know, hey, if you're hungry now, we're giving you a craft that you'll never be hungry again. Like, back, you read the book. I mean, food to me in the beginning was like I said, I burnt toast and put mayonnaise on it just to make it something taste good in my cabinet. We didn't have food. So, when you realize I can work by doing this, I like doing this, and you can excel in it, and kind of it's a restaurant that's built on meritocracy, you'll never be hungry again. So when I'm looking at some of these youth that maybe are poor or are trying to figure out how to get by, I have kind of things to say to them. I'm living proof essentially that if you put your head down and just kind of crush it, you can make your own career path in this business.
This is a funny story in the book. I think is like the first time you got paid and you ordered a bunch of takeout, right? Yeah. And you just ordered all of the takeout, and you say, I sat back and my belly was full, and I felt like this was where I was going to be forever. Yeah. I think that's one of the things that kind of leads me to my next question, which is thinking a little bit about like, why does hospitality just like draw certain people in and not other people? Like, what is it where they get on the pirate ship? And I'd love for you to share that kind of idea. They get on the pirate ship and they're like, I'm interested in this chaos. Yeah. And others are saying they can't fit. What do you think worked for you? And when you are now working and training and seeing these young people come through, I'm sure pretty quickly you can identify the folks who are going to make it and those who may not be cut out for it. Yeah,
I mean, I think the simplest thing to say about the hospitality business is it's chaos. And it really is. I mean, in every form of your imagination, it's chaos. And the concept is to try to tame that chaos, right? So some people thrive in that. Some people have anxiety, though, and they can't touch chaos. If they don't know what's going to happen, they freeze up.
Interesting.
But some people, if you have kind of, gone through life and realizing that every mistake you make gives you a tool to challenge chaos, you start to thrive in that. And I think so you get these people that have made a lot of mistakes in their lives and realize, it doesn't hurt. You can get back up, and redemption's just, as good as your last shift. They start to thrive, and we jive together. And so chaos is kind of my base word on the restaurant business.
There's a part of the book you tell a story about you showing up for your first night and you're doing some barbecue type meals, and you said you thought I was ready and you were ready to go, and halfway through you're drowning.
Oh yeah.
And you survived though. I thought one of the things that was interesting that I think a lot of our listeners can relate to, but also not relate to, is like those moments where you take your first job and you think you're ready, and you get handled that first task and you're by yourself and you're like, oh, I'm not ready. And it was interesting because the chef came up to you and all he said was, you'll get it. You didn't get invited upstairs for a drink that night.
I did not.
Was the competitive spirit in Justin at that time the one that was like, I got to figure this out? Like you responded to it in a way that obviously led you to continue to grow and motivate and want to stay different. How does that kind of speak to who you are as a person? And going back to some of those early tough days.
Every chapter this book is essentially me stepping into a position where I'm not ready. And but the way I get there is by kind of telling the person that I am ready.
Yep.
So I kind of fibbed my way in, but I knew that there would not be a following chapter unless I rose to the occasion in that job, right? So what happened was I basically got my butt kicked on the line really bad, and I realized, like you said, I wasn't ready. But then at that moment I said, okay, tomorrow I'm going to be ready. And so what I did was I kind of took stock of what I did, good, bad, where did I fall down? And I came in the next day, built my mise en place, put my stuff together, and I kicked its butt. And I kind of got into the place where I want to get invited upstairs to have a drink. And to back that story, so anybody that got invited upstairs to get a drink was the club at the time for this restaurant. But I wasn't. I was such a bad cook at the time. Nobody wanted to hang out with me, and especially the servers, because I probably lost some money by taking my time. So eventually I did get invited upstairs. And
that probably opened up, and that made you feel like, hey, I'm in. And then you wanted more of it. You mentioned earlier, and I want to talk about this, you talked about the industry being chaos. And I think most of the patrons, they think it's great, it's fun, the fourth wall. But behind that fourth wall, it's not always pretty. And you go into some of those stories. I mean, you talk about losing friends to addiction. You talk about battling like depression and anxiety amongst the entire industry. It's difficult, and one of the things that stood out to me was you felt compelled at one stage to try to almost like kind of forge this like support group. It was called Herd. You talk a little bit about that side of the industry and what you've learned, and what it is even that you're doing today to try to like help you and other people kind of get through that.
Yeah, the industry is extremely the goods and the bads. The bads are really bad, and I have sadly lost multiple people, coworkers, staff that's worked for me, friends. Due to addiction and suicide, and it's just really tough. But what we try to do is Ben DeBow and I, what we did is we built Herd, and that was a place so we can talk about things, you know, and try to build a place where you can unwind, right? Like and explain what's bothering you, and usually there's a person in the group that may have the same thing that's bothering them, and we can talk about it just to give you a voice, because you know, when you try to hide it, it just makes it worse. You're not getting any inspiration to better yourself.
Yeah, and it's a difficult place, right? The book talks about, like, you know, going into the walk-in, and that's the place to cry, and trying to find just like some other place to be heard.
Well, and I know it's really quick. So the reason they say cry in the walk-in is because, like I said, the fourth wall. So if I'm a server and I'm having a breakdown, I can't do it at the table, right? I can't go in the kitchen because they got stuff going. So there's nowhere to go. Like, you're literally on stage. Yeah. So if you can imagine, like, an actor in a play having a bad day, but you're on stage, what do, right? So if you go in the walk-in, it's quiet, nobody's in there, you shut the door, and you just scream. That's why they call it crying in the walk-in. You're literally trapped, you know, in a way, on public display. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that people don't understand. Like, and I'm glad that we're in a place where a lot of people don't understand us, because it keeps our club that way. But at the same time, when you're a guest and you're giving, you know, your server a hard time or your bartender a hard time, they have to. It's almost cruel, because they have to take it. They have to be there in front of you. They can't hide anywhere. So it's this real weird power trip that some guests have that drive me crazy.
That actually kind of transitions into something I want to touch upon, right? You've been in the industry for a long time. I think it's kind of funny. You acknowledged your weaknesses early days, whether it was not having the skill, not having the right attitude. Then as you kind of came along, like, you learned, okay, I got to shift my attitude. But you kind of held true to some of your own core values as well. Now, one of your titles includes an instructor, like a hospitality instructor who's trying to take lessons and pass that along. But I think any great instructor pulls most of their lessons from their life and from the mentors that helped you. Do you have like one or two mentors or pieces of particular advice that you feel like, okay, this is Justin Wholesome. If you're going to come up through my class, through my school, this is the way that I approach things?
Yeah, I was blessed to have a few mentors. And this business is a mentorship. It's an apprenticeship, you know, whether you're a cook or a server. Hospitality is a craft. So growing up, like, I remember this one story of a guy. He was one of my GMs. He was really great, and I was at the point where I was bartending. I was filling the bar every night. I was really cocky because I was really good at what I did, and so I just kind of had I'm better than everybody else attitude at the time. And it was great because he really took that off. he shut that down really quick. He just brought me to the corner and he said, listen, I really need you just not to be an a-hole today. Yeah. And I was like, wow, did he just say that to me? And I was like, I am being that. And I realized, wow, thank you for being honest and upfront with me and straight with me. And anybody, I guess, clarity is kind, you know, you always say. So just being straight and upfront and telling somebody. I had a bar manager tell me early stages how awful I was when I thought I was great, and he said he was going to fire me, and I thought I was going to get a raise. But that conversation was wonderful for me because it put me in a place where I do need to always get better and be mindful and be self-aware. And so I think self-awareness and communication are two really huge things that can thrive in this business. And I try to preach awareness, communication, and just doing the things that you have to do, whether they're hard or not. You just have to do them.
Amen to that. You came, speaking of communication, you came to our Build Hartford class a couple weeks ago. You said something that stood out to me, and I love this line. I just want to put it in here. You don't know what you don't care about, right? And you were talking about, like, if you want to get better at something, you genuinely have to be passionate and care about it. I want to touch upon two quick things here. You're an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Started your own bourbon company, Up and Down Rockin' Bourbon. You talk a little bit in the book about where the name came from. Quickly, what have you learned going down this pursuit, and what's that meant to you?
Yeah, that was what I've learned essentially is, you know, I've sold so much alcohol from behind the bar that I had to flip it around and then sell alcohol to the stores and bars themselves. So learning how to kind of cold call people, you know, is not fun, and I don't like it. But the whiskey's taken off and people are jiving with it, so it's just fun for me more than anything else.
Yeah, I love that perspective, cool. Being on the other side of it, actually kind of see it. So, all right, so you've been through so many different restaurant positions from me. What's next?
That's a great question. What's next? I have no idea. We will see. I'll let you know.
That is the sequel to the book, because exactly. I think if there's anything true to this book, you don't know, and you're figuring it out. All right, real quickly, we have 3 rapid-fire questions before we wrap this up. Number 1, if you could change one rule or law, what would you change?
Oh, that's That's a tough one. So one rule or law, what would I change? I would change. I don't even know a lot of the laws. I'm going to be honest with you.
Great.
So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the laws well enough to change any of them.
Okay, that's perfect. We're going to skip it. We're going to come back to you,
Great.
though, and you're going to follow up. You're going to hit us up in the comments with your answer. We're going to follow up with you on just now. All right, second one. What's something you're not good at?
Something I'm not good at is patience. I just want to get it done, get there now, and so I'm not good at patience. I'm learning it, and having a baby has very much helped me with that.
It will.
So
it absolutely will. And congratulations
she's done
on
great.
that.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. And the last one. How do you want to be remembered?
Boy, that's a good one too. So I don't know if I really. You're only remembered one or two generations anyway. So I guess just I hope a cool guy.
That's
really it.
Being a
It's
cool
as simple
guy.
as that.
I love that. Justin, you are a cool guy in my book.
Thank you.
I think it was really awesome that you took the time to write this book and to just share some insights, right? And I love it. It's honest. It's not all roses, right? It's actually the intimate side of the hospitality business. And again, on behalf of all of us, thanks for everybody that does what they do. Guys, you got to go check out Serving Life Behind Bars, Kitchen Hospitality. If you go on the website, Savor Up and Down, Rockin' Bourbon, go check it out. And Justin is at Fire by Forge most days. So if you want to stop in and go see what they've got going on, go check it out. Justin, thanks so much.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Great conversation, Rory, and special thanks to Justin for coming into the studio and being part of this episode.
Good idea?
Bad idea.
All right, so for this episode's Good Idea or Bad Idea segment, I have the topic. Ready?
Yep.
Okay, so I don't think this topic could get any more timely. So here's the question. Many brands like Ben & Jerry's, Patagonia have taken stances on social and political issues, which can strengthen brand loyalty, but often has the opportunity to alienate their customers. So it doesn't just stop there. Public figures, influencers, celebrities, they share political and social positions all the time. Social media, like we see it everywhere. Do you think it's a good idea for brand CEOs and others in positions of power with large followings to explicitly support or not support something that's political or social in nature?
So you're saying this is timely because we have an election coming up, and you're thinking a little bit about some of the endorsements or lack thereof that have taken place over the last several weeks. It's been an interesting campaign. We won't dive into the details of that. Do I have an opinion on this? I think I do. I think for someone who cares as much about being consistent with their values, that if your organization feels deeply that you are beholden to your values above anything in the marketplace, then I think you have a certain responsibility to make that clear. Do I think it's going to be always good for business? No. And I think there's a lot of business folks out there who would actually say it'll be bad for business. And truly, if you want to be successful, you do what is in the best interest of the business. But for me personally, if I'm running a business, what's in the best interest of my business is staying in line with my values. And if that feels the need to speak up or speak out on an issue that our organization is connected with, I think it is. The one caveat I will say is this. It puts employees in a really difficult position. When I go to work for an organization, I'm aligned maybe with their purpose, probably mostly, right? Some values, but their purpose. Our purpose is to deliver X, Y, or Z. That's what I want to do. When the organization takes a stance on a political issue, which we've seen happen, and you don't align with that political issue, now you have a conundrum in values. So I'm not suggesting that there's not going to be consequences that are negative, but if they choose to do that, then the organization has to be ready to remedy the consequences that come with it.
Yeah. So I'm going to invite myself in here to share
Jen,
my...
Jen, what do you think about this topic?
As always, I have an opinion on things. I think that there's a fine line between being passionate about and supporting an issue. You know, I used Patagonia as an example. They obviously have values that they align with, and there are some social movements that have come up that they have leaned into because it is in alignment with their values. However, I think it's challenging if a company does jump in and do that, because now do they have to do that for everything that comes up? And when they don't, like you always say, communication's not in just what you say, it's also in what you don't say. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of danger in not showing up. And I also just think from a political standpoint, again, we're not going to get into politics, but when CEOs, celebrities, people that have a large following, make a huge stance, I think it's really challenging because you're in a really big position of power to make huge impacts, and you don't necessarily know the types of people that are following in your influence. And I think that's you have to really take that as something that's precious and be mindful of that.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a really great perspective and a really great conversation, and we'll see how things play out, but maybe this is a topic we got to come back and revisit. Speaking of, that's the end of our show. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Please be sure to share it with your friends or drop us online or an idea for a future episode, topic, or guest.
And don't forget, we produce our show right here in the Collaboratory studios in downtown Hartford.
Coming up later this month here in the greater Hartford area, starting with CCI, there's a traction workshop, Legal Basics for Startups. So be sure to check out our social media for more details on that. Really excited about this one, Jen. Starting on November 29th through December 29th, Glow Hartford will be at the Connecticut Convention Center. This is a holiday light exhibition and extravaganza. If you go, the tickets are $30 for adults, $20 for kid, but you do get a free picture with Santa.
Whoa. I think I need to go. And if you didn't get a chance to catch a UConn basketball game last year, the season has started. So check out the schedule. There are games here at the XL Center in downtown Hartford and also obviously at Gamble and stores.
Go Huskies. And until next time, wishing you good luck in all your endeavors.